Is the anti-democracy movement here in the United States and frankly around the world reaching a tipping point? Yesterday, Politico published an interview with Ukrainian President Zelensky titled "Zelensky Warns Russia Has Penetrated U.S. Politics." It's a chilling read. And to compound the concern, the EU's top diplomat, Joseph Borrell, said this week, and I quote, "Russia threatens Europe. A high-intensity conventional war in Europe is no longer a fantasy." So, what's going on here? Well, democracy is in trouble. It's in trouble here in the United States, where you have Republicans in the House and the Senate openly taking the side of Vladimir Putin over democratic Ukraine. It's in trouble, basically all over the world. And in fact, Freedom House in 2021 reported, and I quote, "The share of countries designated not free has reached its highest level since the deterioration of democracy began in 2006. The countries with declines in political rights and civil liberties outnumbered those with gains by the largest margin recorded during the 15-year period." The report downgraded the freedom scores of 73 countries, representing 75% of the global population. One of those countries that they identified as slipping in terms of democracy, the United States. The real issue here, I think, is pretty straightforward. What's the best way for humans to govern themselves? I mean, you've got 7,000 years of modern history, post-agricultural revolution history, that suggests that, well, for most all of that time, humans have been governed by top-down hierarchies, by kings, by popes, by mullahs, by all different cultures have different words for these. And there have also been, throughout history, a number of very egalitarian societies. Peter Farr, back in 1968, wrote a book called Man's Rise to Civilization and the Native American. He was one of the first anthropologists to go back and find first contact with Native Americans. He's largely from the 1600s, some from the 1700s. First contact with Native American tribes, and to write essentially an ethnography of them. He documents, as I recall, 34 of them. I could be wrong, but it's an amazing book. And in fact, it became the foundation for Daniel Quinn's book, Ishmael. And what he found was that most of the Native American communities in the United States at first contact were egalitarian. They were democratic, small d democratic. There were exceptions, though. There were sun gods, there was human sacrifice. Here in the Pacific Northwest, several of the tribes held slaves. But democracy existed here long before it existed anywhere in Europe, even before it existed in ancient Greece and sort of in ancient Rome. So what's the best way for us to govern ourselves? Well, Thomas Hobbes kicked off this debate in 1651 when he wrote Leviathan, and said that the natural state of humankind is violent and predatory, and therefore, if there isn't the iron fist of church or state to control us all, in such condition, he writes, the life of man is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. You've all heard that quote. 103 years later, Jean-Jacques Rousseau published an article arguing that the natural state of humankind is not violent and hierarchical, but rather compassionate, egalitarian, and democratic. So who's right? In The Hidden History of American Democracy, my most recent book, I did a deep dive into this very question. And, across species, and if you're a regular listener, you've heard me rant about this before, that insects, fish, birds, most mammals operate along democratic lines, small d democratic lines. You watch a school of fish, and it looks like they must be communicating telepathically, because the whole school just goes, and then zoom, they make a 20-degree turn and shoot off in another direction. How do they know to do that? Well, it turns out that with each fin motion, each fish is voting, and if more than 50% of them vote to turn 20 degrees to the right, the whole school turns 20 degrees to the right. The same with flocks of birds. So democracy is the norm. Now, there are exceptions, particularly among primates, interestingly, but democracy is the norm among most animals. So, I'm I'm of the opinion that democracy is the norm here, and that what distorts it is largely when people of great wealth start seizing political processes so that they can, basically control everything that's going on. Like billionaire Rupert Murdoch coming to the United States. Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, wrote a piece for the Sydney Morning Herald titled "Cancer Eating the Heart of Australian Democracy." Rupert Murdoch, the cancer eating the heart of Australian democracy. Virtually the entire Republican Party is now committed to authoritarianism. They're supporting Donald Trump, who is an open authoritarian. There's a few holdouts like Kinzinger and Cheney, but they're kind of the exceptions that prove the rule. Mitt Romney, and they're all, Romney's resigning, and Kinzinger and Cheney lost their last elections. So what's happened is that the Republican Party has joined with essentially Russia and China, and arguably North Korea and Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia, and all these other autocracies around the world. And sadly, we're seeing Israel also move in the direction of autocracy under the leadership of Netanyahu. Now, whether they will pull back from that or not is an open question. Benny Gantz is running to challenge him on it, and keep an eye on that. But what we're seeing all around the world is democracies under attack. In the case of Ukraine, under physical attack, and in the case of the United States, under social media and intellectual attack, for lack of a better way to say it. So what do we do about this? I think we need to fight for democracy, bottom line. And we need to call out those people who don't believe in democracy. I think most Americans still have a belief in democracy. We'll be right back.